Thank you for joining me, first of all. If you don't know me, my name is Ellen and I am the Partner Communications Manager at 3CX. And today we're doing something a little bit different from what we normally talk about, and we're stepping into the realm of digital marketing. So I'm going to kind of introduce key concepts, and we're going to work through some really easy things actually that you can start implementing in your digital content that will help boost your traffic. So first up, let's just agree on what we mean by digital marketing. And really, marketing obviously for all of us has always been about connecting with your audience in the right place and at the right time. That's the crux of it. And today, what that basically means is you need to meet people where they're spending most of their time, which is on the internet. So if you're an office worker, I think there are some shocking statistics out there that we spend about 10 hours a day on the internet. So if you're not absolutely nailing your online offer, you're not going to be getting the customers through the door that you really want. So with digital, businesses like you guys need to be leveraging a whole host of channels. So today we're going to be talking about search engine optimization, social media, email, and how you can actually optimize your websites themselves to engage with more prospective customers and also your own current customers. And when we talk about marketing in any sense, there are kind of three keys to your success that I'm going to kind of delve into in more detail. So what we aim to do is threefold. We want to increase visibility, so make our brand more known to the world. We want to increase traffic to our platforms and have visitors engage with our brand. And then ultimately, we want our visitors to transact with us or complete an action that we specify. So that might be actually purchasing, which is obviously the ultimate goal, but it could be something else like completing another call to action. So for us on 3CX, it can be downloading a free trial, or for you guys, it could just be to start with signing up for a newsletter that comes out monthly. And to make this happen, you're going to need a multifaceted campaign, so a campaign that's hitting your customers at all angles. So by the end of this webinar, hopefully you guys will have a little bit of an understanding into kind of basic SEO and search engine optimization. You'll know how to then optimize your website to get the best return for your SEO. You'll have some hints and tips for creating engaging content, and you'll learn a little bit about how to increase your authority with social media and how that plays into SEO a little bit kind of indirectly. So I'm going to say that we're quite a big room today. So I'm not going to take questions kind of throughout. I will pause and let you have the opportunity to ask them. There are a few comments coming in about audio already. So if some kind person in the chat box could just tell them to either press F5, dial in from a Chrome browser, or not panic because we will send out the recording afterwards, that would be fantastic. And with that, let's kick things off by talking about SEO. So kind of this, I mean, marketing in general has quite a lot of jargon, but SEO will come up all the time. And SEO really is the process of optimizing your online platforms, mainly your website, but it can be other content as well, for specific words or phrases that make your website show up in the search engine results for relevant searches. So when we think about the fact that actually 93%, I think these days, of internet searches or internet experiences actually start with a search engine, it's a really, really integral part of your marketing strategy to nail your SEO. So an effective SEO strategy, as you'll see on the screen, I've just pulled out some of the benefits. It's going to increase your traffic, and also it's going to have a really, really high return on investment, because outside of the cost of you guys actually just dedicating some resource to getting your SEO in order, there isn't much else to it cost-wise, because we're focusing on organic searches as opposed to paid ads. So really, other than that cost of setting it up, you're not going to incur any financial impact. And then doing it well, you will increase your brand's awareness, you'll be more visible and visible to the right customers, which is crucial, because although you want to be out there, it's not much use spending all your money if you're not actually targeting customers that are interested in your services. And it builds trust. So I don't know how many of you actually spend time browsing the second and third pages on Google, but I really don't. And that's basically because the higher you are in the search rankings, the more likely people are to trust you. So you need to be aiming to be in the top 10, and people will pretty much instantly view you as a credible source if you make that list. And then finally, your competition is doing it. So if you're not optimizing your SEO and you're not thinking about this when you're writing your content, your competitors will be, and that means that they will nab those top spots before you do. So you really need to be on it and finding the right keywords to drive your business. And then when we think about SEO, there's one thing that we really always need to keep in mind, and that is Google. So I don't know if you guys recognize the chap on the screen there, but that's Jimmy Wales, and he's the founder of Wikipedia. So if you've done any kind of search for anything on the internet, you will notice that Wikipedia typically show up in the top spot, and that's because they've absolutely nailed this on the head. And he famously said that if it isn't on Google, it doesn't exist. And he's pretty much right. So that's something that you should live by. And whilst there are other search engines out there that could be useful, Google actually has an 87% share of desktop searches, which is phenomenal. And for mobile, I think it's even higher. So I remember reading somewhere that mobile actually is a 96% share for Google. So when you think that there are 4.5 billion internet users in the world, that's a really incredible figure. So this is where you need to focus your efforts. And then the other thing that you really need to know when you're getting started is that 71% of those clicks go to the first 10 listings on Google. So not only is it important that you're focusing on being there, it's important that you're focusing on nabbing those top spots. And if we're going to do that, we need to know what Google are looking for. So Google's algorithms are famously difficult to understand. They pretty much change daily, and there's thousands of rules that you need to keep track of if you're working in SEO full time. And even if you do your best, it's a bit of a minefield. But there are some well-known indicators and kind of general tips that you can keep in mind when you are designing your website. And that will just generally help it rank well. So these are, as listed on the screen, security being a really big one. So does Google actually perceive your site to be secure and trustworthy? The page speed, so how fast it loads. So did you know that actually, I think it's something like a 1 second delay in your page loading results in a 7% decline in conversions to your site. So the impact on your traffic is really significant. And actually this applies to mobile as well. So your site does need to be optimized for mobile use these days to pass those algorithm checks. Then domain friendliness, so that's your URL and your site age. Relevancy, which is your site relevant for the right keywords, which I'll delve into a little bit more next. Authority, does Google see you as a credible voice? Are you established in your field? Who's using your site and who is talking about you? And then unique content. So are you adding genuinely valuable content and not kind of plagiarizing things that you found elsewhere on the internet? Because that, again, is going to help you rise through the ranks. And then we have user experience, which is how useful your page is, how long people spend on it, and real information, which for you guys is a really, really easy one that you can start introducing pretty much from this afternoon. Basically, that just means that as a local business, you need to make sure that your contact details, maps, telephone numbers, and the like are really accurate so that people can find you and that Google can show you to people in your local area. So what we're going to do now is examine how we can keep these indicators in mind when we're coming up with keyword strategies, website plans, and kind of content plans that will help you drive those rankings up. And it can be a little bit tricky to know where to start with this. So I would say the very first thing you need to do if you want to kind of focus on improving your rankings is identify the right keywords that are relevant to your business. So if you can identify the right keywords, you'll see that your traffic goes up and your sales go up. Whereas you might still see traffic increases actually if you identify incorrect keywords, because basically you will notice that you've optimized for them, but because they're not quite relevant to your business, you won't notice that the sales are coming through. So you won't have as many conversions, and that will be your indicator that it's probably time to go back to the drawing board. So once you know your keywords, the next step is to understand your customer. So obviously you need to know what questions your customer will ask when they are looking for a solution like ours, and where they go to find that information and optimize for them. So I'll take 3CX kind of out of the kind of conversation for a little bit, but let's say that we were the owners of a pet shop. You probably know that one of your keywords is going to be dog food, because you're going to have loads of dog owners that need to feed their pets. But what you need to know is whether your target customers are more likely to search for kind of what dog food is recommended by vets or cheap dog food. And that will depend on things like whether you live in an urban area, whether you live in a rural area that's a little bit more affluent, and the age of your consumers and so on. So it's really about delving into the detail to understand the language that they use and how they will search. And once you have these locked down, you'll find it much easier to adjust your website and your content to target those customers. But it can be a little bit tricky to know where to start finding that information. So on the screen now, you should see a list of my favorite free tools for keyword research and consumer profiling, because there are a whole host of free tools out there, but it can be quite difficult to actually identify which ones are going to work for you. So I pulled out 3 from each, all free of charge, that are definitely worth having a go at and really easy to get started with. So on the keyword side, Google Keyword Planner is obviously a really good place to start. And that will basically tell you how much traffic or viewers a certain phrase or word will get you, and then what it costs if you were to pay to advertise for that word. And typically what you want is a high traffic and reasonably, you want it to cost something. So you don't want it to cost kind of 10 cents or 10 pence, because that probably means that it's not worth very much. So if you're looking at a keyword and you see that, yeah, actually, to have a paid ad for that would cost me kind of $3, $4, that's worth investing some time in, because what it means is people are searching for it and it's seen as a valuable term. And I would say that's probably as far as Google Keyword Planner goes. So it doesn't really get into the detail. So I'd say look at Google Keyword Planner as your kind of top layer. And then to take it one step further, I always use something like Ubersuggest, which is a free platform that will actually suggest new keywords for you. So if you put your keyword in, it will show you associated keywords and long tail keywords, which are basically phrases that people would use. So instead of searching for dog food, which would be a keyword, you might search for what does dog food cost, which is your long tail. And it will also tell you how hard a keyword is to rank for, which of your competitors are using it, and show you the questions that people are using. So that's a much more detailed way to get an overview of your keywords. And then my kind of wild card here for the third one is Wikipedia. So it might seem a little bit unusual, but it's really easy to use. And actually, if you find your topic area or your keyword and then look at the relevant links that Wikipedia are using, you'll get a whole host of content ideas and suggestions for new keywords, because what they typically do in an article is start with the overarching keyword and then they root down like a tree with all the branches coming off of the associated terms. So that's a really good way of you kind of getting some ideas for kind of blog posts and the like. So then on the flip side, we've got your customer data and where you can get that from. First up, I'd recommend kind of looking at the spaces that you're probably already in, so things like online forums, and seeing what questions people are asking, how many responses they're getting. That's obviously an indicator of how common the question is. So if you see someone post a question and getting absolutely bombarded with opinions and answers, that's probably a suggestion that that's a good topic for you to build some content around on your website, or maybe pop an FAQ in there. So you could also use Google Trends, and that will show you kind of up-and-coming keywords, would be the word. So in lockdown, actually, in the UK, there were some really funny keywords that turned up on Google Trends. So things like dumbbells increased by about 700% in searches. So you can kind of see what's shifting in people's mindsets and what's becoming more popular. And that lets you plan your content a little bit further out. So you can then start planning a month or two in advance. And then finally, my final suggestion would be starting to have a look at things like Facebook audience insights. So for free, if you're a small business, Facebook can tell you the demographics of people that interact with your business page. So you should definitely all have a business listing on Facebook if you don't already. And it will also tell you a lot of detail about the demographics of people on Facebook generally, which will help you target campaigns. So Facebook literally can tell you what TV program IT guys that work for kind of multinational companies or whatever it might be like to watch on the weekend. So you can really kind of understand this person and what they like to do, which will help you target your marketing efforts towards them. An incredibly scary amount of detail, but incredibly useful at the same time. And I've seen a few comments coming in asking about whether I'll release a video after this session. And yes, we are recording it. It will be popped on YouTube for you to watch on demand. So now let's have a look at your website and how you can optimize it, bearing these things in mind to attract more visitors to your site. So if we remember the list of Google indicators, really it's the first 4 that are going to be addressed with your quick technical changes to the website. And I'm going to work through them one by one now. So first, let's talk about security. And Google has to be able to access your website to review your content and decide what it's all about. So it's really important that they can actually access your website. And the way that they do that is by having bots, or spiders they're sometimes called, that crawl your web pages and kind of pull out all the key data. And if they don't trust your site, they're not actually going to crawl it at all. So really, really important that you focus on security. Using a trusted website builder will really help with this. So platforms like WordPress or Wix, they're the big 2. Also, we harp on about the Let's Encrypt for 3CX all the time, but having an SSL certificate for your website, obviously a real biggie, because otherwise when visitors are coming to your page, they're going to see a big notification that your site isn't secure, and then they're more likely to leave. So that kind of has 2 impacts. One is not having the SSL will deter Google in the first place. And the second is that big not secure banner deters your customers, drives traffic down, and then consequently drives you down in the rankings even further. So do make sure you've got your Let's Encrypt, and it's free. And then have a clear sitemap. So make sure your site is structured, easy to manage, and easy for those bots to crawl. There are programs and plugins for your website builders that will help you develop your sitemap as well. So not too much of a task. And then next up, we have page speed. So believe it or not, I did hint at it earlier, but page speed is actually one of the most important ranking factors on Google. So naturally, it's in Google's interest to kind of improve our experience of the web. And fast loading web pages do that because we pretty much want everything instantly these days, whether it's your web page loading or your Amazon being dropped by a drone to your mailbox. So Google actually announced some algorithm updates back in July 2018 that increased the precedent of page speed and introduced a new precedent for mobile. So that's why I was saying earlier, really do focus on optimizing for both. You will be penalized if you don't. And there are free tools available for you to test your page speed. So Google has a mobile testing tool, which if you just search for it, will be the first thing that pops up, which shows you how your site stacks up. And then they also have a whole section dedicated on the Google Search Console with loads of tips for boosting your speed. So well worth a look at. Then we have domain friendliness. So don't know how many people knew this, but this was a new one for me. But actually 60% of sites that rank in the top 10 on Google are 3 years older or more. And basically what that means is they give precedent to sites that are slightly older because they basically assume that they're a little bit more trustworthy and credible. So just like a good wine, the quite a comforting thing is that your website will get better with age. But for those of you who are a little bit newer, there are some quick fixes that you can introduce here that will make a difference. So one is that your domain name really matters. I have seen this done by partners before, but I would say please don't. But don't buy something like whatpbxshouldIuse.com and then use it to sell 3CX. Do focus on having a domain that is centered around your business name or something relevant, and don't stuff it with keywords because you will just be penalized, and instead use your keywords in your content to get the results. Similarly, With your URLs, keeping them really short will boost your rankings. So aim for something that's short but relevant. About 6 words is considered optimum. And then links. So the web is built on links, and actually the way that those Google bots crawl your site is moving from kind of link to link because they will see that as a natural flow. So there are 3 kinds of links to think about. You've got inbound, which are backlinks from other sites. So that might be networking groups or just credible figures or speakers in your area or people that you are in contact with regularly that can advocate for you. Then you've got your outbound links, which are ways for you to show your creativity when writing content by basically linking to the sources that you take inspiration from. It doesn't kind of show a weakness to show that you've taken insight from someone else and that the thoughts aren't entirely your own. Actually shows kind of intellect and credibility. So do make sure that you reference sources. And then internal links. So link to yourself as well, really good way to boost your rankings and to drive traffic to other areas of your website. So make sure if you've got an FAQ, for example, and you want to then link that to your price page if it's relevant, do it, absolutely. And then finally, we have real information, which again, for you guys is super, super important because the majority of you are going to be operating within a kind of local area. So make sure that you look after things like your NAP, which is your name, address, and phone number. So just keep it up to date on all of your listings. So you're probably listed on Facebook in various business directories. You might be on Yelp. Just make sure that if you have an office move, you go and tidy up everywhere instead of just changing your website, because otherwise it gets quite complicated for Google to work out where you are. Also, get reviews and testimonials where you can from local businesses. So if you can add those to your webpage, brilliant. If you can get some reviews on kind of Yelp again or kind of other sites, that will work wonders because they can obviously then link back to you. And make sure you're optimized for the right local search terms. So optimize for your area. If you want to put your like kind of neighborhood or your town or the region that you work in as one of your keywords, that will do the trick. But just don't miss that one because so crucial for you to finding clients that are, one, easy for you to get to, easy for you to manage, and really good prospects for your business. So now I'm going to talk about content optimization, which will help you handle the other 4 indicators on Google's list. So that's authority, delivering that unique content, making sure that your users are having a really great experience, and keeping it really relevant. And I'm going to do this in 2 halves. So to start with, I'm just going to kind of talk through what your ideal web page should look like, or your ideal optimized web page. Then I'm going to talk about the actual content itself. So here's my very sexy blank web page. You'll notice there that it says keywords in the title as your first point. Absolutely do this and make sure that your keyword is as close to the start of the title as humanly possible, because that just makes it really easy for Google to pick up. Doesn't have to kind of get distracted by any other terms that might be in there. So if it fits and if it's natural, keep those keywords towards the front. Also try and include your keyword in the slug, which is the part of your URL that follows your domain, and that lets Google know what the page is about. And in the SEO title, which can be different from your page title, and actually it should be, because your SEO title is the title that actually shows up on Google, the Google search. And what you'll want to do there is maybe put something that's a little bit more eye-catching, a little bit sexier, and it's going to entice those viewers onto your page. So it can be different, but all 3 of them need to have the keywords in and as near to the front as possible. Next, make sure that you're using your headings and subtitles correctly. So quite often I see people, especially when I'm looking at various websites or reviewing them, that basically choose a headline based on how pretty it looks in WordPress, which is definitely not the right strategy for you to go down. So make sure that your headings are hierarchical, basically, which indicates the importance of each section that you have on your page, because Google will work through in order of importance. So they'll start with the title, then go to your subtitle, and then go to your H1 heading and all the way through. So do just start with your H1s and work down. Really easy trick just to boost yourselves a little bit. Get your links in there. So both of the previous steps help Google determine the relevancy of your page. So that's what topic it relates to and whether it actually is working for those keywords. Whereas our next step focuses on authority. So links really help Google decide how important you are as a source of information on the topic that you are talking about. So it shows a deep understanding, it shows that you are worth being read and worth someone spending time on. So get all three of your link strategies on particularly your homepage, but in as many as you can. And again, another easy way to get yourselves growing. And then this one, sometimes missed, but important for a variety of reasons. But make sure when you are adding images to a web page that you're adding alt tags. One, because it helps Google actually identify what the image is because it can't view the picture. But two, things like alt tags and descriptions help people that have visual impairments and kind of other disabilities who are using specialist software to actually view those web pages get a sense of what the images on the page are about. So it lets those software applications read the page. So it's really important from that perspective as well. Then you should have your reviews and contact information. So again, you guys as smaller local businesses, you're going to be optimizing for IT providers in Florida, which is a nice narrower field than trying to go at it at a national level. And your reviews and contact information are going to help you climb for that specific region. And then when it comes to keywords, you should have them woven throughout your content. So what that means is don't stuff a load of keywords all the time into your content. You need them to just kind of flow in naturally. So a good rule of thumb is to have kind of 5% of your page as keywords, which might sound a little bit bizarre, but easier to kind of remember than you would think once you get in the swing of things. And what that means is when you're kind of in the practice of writing for keywords, it should just come naturally from you because you're writing on a really specific topic. So the keywords are going to be kind of part of the conversation that you're having anyway. Sometimes I find that if you actually write with the specialist software or the SEO software, you're encouraged to pack too many keywords in, and then it does add a kind of unnatural flow. So I would say just kind of focus on it on your own, writing with something like Word rather than kind of pay for that in the first instance. And then maybe look at kind of scaling up to a package once you're ready. And then when it comes to actually crafting content, so this is outside of your web page, it might be on your blog, it might be kind of information that you're sharing on social media. There are a few kind of writing tips that are just really quick tricks that you can actually start incorporating today. So your content should be focused and targeted. Again, just like when you're designing a web page, content needs to have the keywords sprinkled throughout. If it feels like it's a struggle, probably means you're using the wrong word, probably means you've veered off track with your writing, so go back to the drawing board. And then with all content, it's quality over quantity. So bombarding people on your website or social media with content isn't necessarily the best way to go. Google's algorithms actually reward you for the number of clicks that your content receives and how long users typically spend on your website's page. So what that means is it's better for you to write slightly longer, more detailed pieces than chuck a load of really small ones out there on your blog. So ideally, over 700 words ranks really well. So something that's like a 3-minute or a 4-minute read. And you'll also find that you'll get more shares on social media if you write something slightly longer. So do prioritize, kind of invest time in it basically, and then you'll get the results. And actually, the other thing that I would say on that is don't think that you can't revisit old content. So sometimes people feel like a bit of pressure to kind of chuck a load of content out there as fast as possible. And that can be quite hard to keep up with workload. But if you go back and tweak existing content just to make it relevant, so say it was done a year ago, just update it, give it a fresh spin, that will still help towards your rankings. So not everything needs to be net new. Then make sure that any piece of content that you write is focused on just one topic, so multiple topics in a single piece. Get really confusing, that reduces your index. So if you're creating something, maybe it's like an FAQ, for example, have one FAQ or one topic per FAQ page instead of having multiple topics on one page if driving your traffic is what you're aiming to do. Just helps to keep it really clear, really structured, and it lets people find exactly what they're searching for. And then finally, keep your content unique and thought-provoking. So if your content is a duplication of something that you found somewhere else, you're going to be penalized because Google sees everything. They're omnipotent. They will not miss it. So take time to make your content your own. And what I would say is this is also true for our web content kit. So 3CX provides a marketing kit, obviously, for all of you guys. And part of that is a whole host of like web materials that you can add to your site. Now, we don't give you that just so that you can copy word for word what we've wrote. We do an all right job, but you guys want to put your own spin on it. And that, again, will help you climb, because if you think that there's 200 of you in this room, if you all go and copy that content directly, that's a lot of the same thing out there on the web, and Google isn't going to know who the authority is that wrote that. So do tweak it, make it your own, and you will then notice that traffic starts to grow. And I'm going to finish with like a word on social media. So social media is obviously a topic that can really, we could do a whole webinar on social media, and I might at some point. But there are just kind of a few things that you can get thinking about. I've seen a few comments coming in there saying, please. Okay, so maybe we'll do that one next month as a follow-up. But for social media, there are loads of platforms out there at the moment. But for you guys, particularly in kind of a B2B space, LinkedIn is your absolute must. So if you're only on one social media site, for now, make it LinkedIn. And that's basically because there are loads of networking opportunities. The conversations are professionally focused. So you're not going to be invading someone's kind of personal life by approaching them on Facebook, which is never really the best way forward. So if you had to pick one, go with LinkedIn. Then start to consider things like Twitter and Instagram if you have the resource and it's relevant to you. And remember that social media is all about engagement. So what social media is not is another environment for you to just hard sell in. So being too salesy on social media typically doesn't work. So what you want to do is focus on driving engagement, having really good conversations, a little bit of a sprinkling as to what 3CX can do, but really acting in the advice space is the way to go. And you can do that in a kind of number of ways. So you can do that, one, by finding out where your customers are, like professional networks on LinkedIn, for example, and then joining in with the thought threads that are already going and kind of offering your advice and insights on those threads. Or you might want to start some thought threads yourself and let people kind of reach you there. And then after that, if you have a really good conversation, send them a private message and discuss kind of helping them further. Just don't do it as something that's super, super obvious and very heavily salesy. And then do use social media to share your content too. So it's really good to share kind of news stories and things that are happening in the world around you, but it's a brilliant platform for driving traffic to your website. Google doesn't directly kind of take into account the amount of shares that you get on social media, but because your social media will drive clicks onto your website, you will see your traffic go up, and then Google will reward that. So there's a kind of indirect link between how well your social media is doing and the conversions that you're likely to see on your website. So do pay attention to it, because again, it's a free platform for you that's really easy for you to get out there and start creating a bit of a voice for your brand. And that brings me to the end of the webinar. So it was an introduction to digital marketing. So what we might do in the future is actually delve into certain topics in a little bit more depth. But I'm hoping that everybody kind of has a better understanding of kind of SEO, some of the hints and tips that help you get around Google's algorithms, and can start driving that extra traffic to your site.